Maria and I spoke with Tracy Lawson from the University of Essex today, and we had a really wonderful chat with her about her research and professional career progression. We've been thinking and talking a lot about how individual the academic process is for young researchers, and Tracy had a lot of insightful things to say about how she navigated her process to her professorship at Essex.
Okay, so, well, I'm Tracy Lawson. I'm a professor of plant physiology at the University of Essex. I've been at Essex for 19 years now. Originally went there as a postdoc, and then still there.
Interesting.
So quite a different path, which I can tell you about how I got there. I work on stomata and have done ever since my PhD, which I did in Dundee on stomata. And I'm very interested in stomatal behaviour and how it affects photosynthesis. And at the moment, I'm particularly interested in the kinetics of stomatal responses, how that influences carbon uptake for photosynthesis, especially thinking about trying to improve that and also improve water use efficiency. I'm also interested a lot in natural variation of photosynthesis. So there's a photosynthetic theme here with the stomata. And also I have a lot of other projects that are looking to try and manipulate stomata in some way to try and improve that. And that goes right down from exploring guard cell photosynthesis to trying to manipulate numbers of stomata on leaves as well. So it covers a whole range of that. And so I have a lot of projects in my lab that are looking at those sort of aspects as well as trying to develop tools to do it. So we do a lot of techniques and develop new techniques and tools to try and address some of these physiological questions. And then try and work with people like Mike that has mutants or tools that we can look at from that's been altered in either sort of the genetic or the biochemical side of it, and we can explore that.
Do you focus only on the C3 photosynthesis or?
Mostly, but I have looked at C3, C4 dumbbell kidney-shaped guard cells as well. So between the monocots and the dicots. I'll show you a little bit about that today from some of the kinetics. So I'm just focusing on the kinetics today. Which I hope will not be too much on just kinetics.
It's always good to look at graphs. We biologists, we sometimes forget the importance of graphs.
So that's most of what I do. I do a lot of work with Christine Rains as well, trying to improve photosynthesis as well. So I do a lot of collaboration with her.
Yeah, looking at your profile on the Essex website, there's a long list of interests on it. And I was thinking, as I was looking at it, how do you focus on one topic, which seems to be guard cells and photosynthesis and maybe water use efficiency, but also diversify enough that you can kind of see the long game with your research?
I think that's a really good question. It's actually a really tricky thing, and you've got to be really careful to not dilute too much, unless you're a genius. If you're a genius, you probably can. It's something that I did a little bit too much of, I think. So, I have done a lot of work on cyanobacteria and coral, as well as plants and photosynthesis. And it's good in a way because you learn new things. You can take, the reason why I ended up with a grant in coral was I took the erga side of measuring plants and applied it to coral to make a carbon chemistry system. It took a lot of effort and diversion away from that. So I think you've got to be really careful to not do that too much. And I'm a bit conscious that I maybe did do that a little bit too much a while ago. And I'm never going to give up plants and stomata because it's my passion. So although I find the other side really interesting, if I have to make a choice, it's going to have to be that way. So it's a really good question, and it's something that's very easy to do, and sometimes it's not the best. It can be, but you've got to be really careful. I think it's a really careful balance to focus. Keep focused and don't. The more projects you do, the less you can focus
concentrate.
It's
and I struggle with that sometimes.
You can find interest, your own personal interest in practically anything. So how do you kind of maintain that focus? But I also think, how do you find a project that you know you can do for 19 years, or more? Or are you just like,
and convince people, that they should fund you because you have like a long-term idea. It's not only a project of 3 years, full stop. Like to convince that you can maintain.
But also manageable.
I think you've got to, I suppose, I've been interested in stomata since I did my PhD and actually ended up at Essex. I gave up a postdoc position at Nottingham to take up a position at Essex because it was stomata and chlorophyll fluorescence. I thought, that has my name on it. So I think, so I've always just had that passion. I've loved plants since I was 10 years old. So I, got a greenhouse when I was 14, and whether that was going to be digging gardens or doing something in plants, that was what I wanted to do. So I suppose I've always loved doing photosynthesis and small behaviour, so it's very easy to be driven on that. I think you worry about where you're going, what the next step is, and if something's not working, you do have that. Things sometimes come from strange places, like ideas come from mistakes or some experiments, Friday afternoon experiments, those sort of things they do, and you sometimes think, I'm never going to have another idea.
But
things sort of happen,
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, so I was thinking of the same thing as thinking about, writing up these project proposals for potential applications for either fellowships or faculty positions, and kind of thinking, well, I know what I'm doing right now, but what I'm doing right now, and I think we're lucky in Mike that he really allows us a lot of autonomy and ownership of our projects. So
which is really good.
Even if he kind of gave us like a kick in a direction, and it's definitely kind of his interest, he really allows us to do what we find interesting in it. So there is a lot of ownership there, but thinking about, okay, well, if I can't take this particular project with me, how do I define something for myself?
And I think that's it. I think, and the more you go to conferences, you listen to talks, and then you think, oh, well, what about if that went with that? Does that fit with something of mine? And ideas grow. It's planting a seed, getting that to germinate with some preliminary data or something like that, and then trying to run with that.
Yeah. So you talked about how you did a postdoc at Essex, and that turned into a permanent position. How did that work out?
So it was a long transition.
Was it?
Yes. So I went there as a postdoc to originally work with Neil Baker and James Morrison. And after that finished, I actually went to Australia for a little bit and worked with Susanna von Kemmerer, who's a very big name in photosynthesis in the field. And then actually I returned to Essex again, actually more for personal reasons, other than, I was offered some jobs in Australia, but I thought, I hope I'm making the right, it's my one move, not career driven. And actually was I thought I was going to have to leave science because I couldn't get a position. I applied for fellowships, I didn't get them. I got interviews, didn't get them. I thought, and I sort of was running out of options. And then a postdoc came along that had my name written on it when it went in as a grant, but I was never sure if it was going to get funded. Anyhow, it got funded, and it was more on the algae side of things, on libs. I did that postdoc, and then a permanent research position came up, so it was right time, right place, and they said to me, make it what you will, because it was a strange position. It was a bit of an odd position. I was only one of two. Actually, I was the only person in this entire school that eventually had a senior research position, so equivalent to a senior lecturer, but not on an academic contract. So I took that and drove it to where it is now.
Okay.
So, but it was a
good
research
timing.
position, yeah.
Yeah,
And
that luck plus
Timing.
right place, right
Yeah.
time, and there's elements of luck and working hard. I
Yeah.
think, and sometimes I think it's really important to do things outside of just your thing.
Yeah.
You've got to be a good colleague as well and show that you're willing to do things, drive things forward, and things like that. I think they're all good.
Yeah.
But also to take opportunity, you never know what's around the corner. I was really, really worried at one point and actually had a job, signed a contract somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, and then
I
came
can.
up, and it's worrying. And I mean, I never wanted to leave. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted an academic position.
Yeah.
But it was so worrying. And then I got this research position. I thought, right. And I did a lot of things, which also is why I did a lot of algae work as well. So I did work with other people, but drove my own stuff forward.
Yeah.
And as I say, I was the only person that got to it.
Yeah.
I was reader as a researcher only,
Mm-hmm.
and then my contract got changed to academic contract.
Do you see these types of opportunities available nowadays? Because I think one of the things that we always worry about is, talking with our advisors who are maybe, if we're lucky, a generation behind us. But I think a lot of times they're a couple of generations behind us. And so when they say like, oh, you just like apply for a lot of things and you finally get something. And then now we're just like, we're being told, like, the only things that we can do is postdocing. There aren't very many opportunities. And the ones that are, there's so much competition.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. Or they're the types of positions that we don't, or that I'll say, I don't necessarily want. I don't want to move to Kentucky. Sorry, Kentucky, but I don't want to move there. Or I can't move there because of personal reasons.
Yes, exactly.
As, like, or just personal preference. Or I don't want to move somewhere where I'm going to have to work in some fields that I either am the only plant person or I'm the only cell biologist, or one or the other. It's kind of like, what kind of community do you want, and is that even available? Are there positions even available?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's tough, and I think it's potentially getting tougher. So I think what you've got to do is, if you really want to try for an academic career or a research career, whatever you want to try for, I think what you've got to do is try. And I think that you've got to try and publish stuff, try and get a fellowship. If you can get a fellowship, that's and I say this as if it's like, I mean, I also
just do it.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes it's because you don't apply for some of these things, and I think sometimes that's a confidence thing.
Yeah,
and I think sometimes it's a bit of a female trait as well. So, and I think another thing is that, if you see a position coming up, you think, that would be ideal for me, but I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
Maybe you should still think about applying for it, because other people will, and I've realised that as well, that other people will apply for that. And that was something that I did wrong, is I thought I had to have, I don't know how many papers I was thinking I had to have, and how many years postdoc before I could apply for an academic position. And I sort of think, why did no one tell me that you actually don't need, somehow in my mind I thought 10 years and 20, 30, 40 papers. Do you know what I mean? That's something that was, and you don't need that to apply for it, but you need to have some good ideas. If you can show you can bring in money, it's really important. And there's now a teaching aspect to that as well. So also getting experience in any of those things to try and make yourself different to other people.
Yeah.
But I think you definitely you've got to be more confident, or have some confidence to apply for it.
I think also the way that we tell younger people what they need or how they need to support needs to change, because we have a lot of early career research workshops and women in science workshops, and how to get a faculty or an academic position, or how to get a position outside of academia workshops. And we went to one last year where someone who sits kind of on a hiring committee said, these are the things that we're looking for. And I think she meant it as a joke, but for me, it like really kind of hit me in the wrong way, where she was like, we're looking for the next Nobel Prize laureate. And I thought, okay, sure, but how realistic is that really? And if you're telling,
who's going to be confident to apply for that?
Yeah. Or you're just going to think, oh, those are the people I'm competing against, and I don't have 3 pages at the end of my CV that's full of publications in PNAS. I don't have that. Yeah. So is it even realistic for me to spend the time?
It's also the teaching part, like, I don't know how it is in Essex, but I think it's around UK probably is the same thing, but as postdocs, we don't get the opportunity to teach. We can demonstrate in practicals. We can have like supervising students and so on. But that's I'm not sure if that qualifies as teaching when you go for lecturer positions, for example, or how you can shape that in a way to present and say, you know what, I have this experience.
So I think, I think any bits of experience are useful. I mean, so a couple of my postdocs have done a couple of lectures. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but there's a couple of things that they've done. I think, though, that supervising students in the lab, all of that, you turn them to those positives, because actually that's quite tricky. It's a lot of work, and the management of people and students and explaining things is a really key part of that. So I think all of those little bits, you try and take those opportunities. I agree. I think sometimes it's not easy to hit some of the skills, but sometimes it's like having ideas of how might you do something different teaching. You've all done degrees and done lectures, thought, it would be good if you could do something. Just having some of them ideas is not a bad thing. I mean, a lot of those positions tend to be research driven. Yeah. But I think it's good to have some. Yeah.
So how do you as an advisor and as a mentor help your students kind of approach these problems or issues?
Yeah, so I think the key thing I think is in terms of to try and make yourself at the end of your PhD or postdoc is publications. I think is one thing. So I try and really push and encourage publications to try and write them as you're going, or try and get as much out. Maybe even doing a small amount of work that's on the side that's involved in somebody else to get an extra publication, I think can be worth it, as long as that's not distracting from your PhD and stuff. I think I encourage people to meet people and network. I think that's also really important. I think it's important to go to conferences and to do that and to take those opportunities. So, I mean, I've got a few people that's just not that keen to go to conferences.
Yeah, it's like this anxiety.
I don't understand that though, because it's like you get to go someplace
it's inspiring.
different.
It's really good. You get motivated. There's some really good things for going to conferences.
It's usually really in a beautiful place.
Yeah. And it's really important for science in the future, for collaborations. I think it's going to be even more important to collaborate with people that's, it's like Mike and myself, I do physiology, he does the electrophysiology, and, nearly everything. But do you know what I mean? So it's really important collaboration-wise on that as well. So, and also fellowships. So try and encourage them to do fellowships and to be confident in applying for things.
Yeah. I think something that you said really struck me where you said, why didn't anyone ever tell me that this is the stuff I needed to be doing, or why didn't I think
myself
that this was, and I find that is my current frustration, but also kind of thinking about in the back of my mind as we see more students come into the lab, or as we start managing people, saying, okay, so you're a junior, or you're going into your last year of university. Have you thought about doing these things?
Yes. And I think sometimes it's not. I know that one of my PhD students, I can't remember what it was, said something to me, and I said, but you need to be doing blah blah blah. And I said, yeah, but nobody told me that. And I thought, you're right, nobody did. And it's because you sometimes forget as well. Some of them things can be important. So I think
I sometimes think about it as like if someone was to try to explain, like if you had to explain how it was to learn how to read to somebody, like how would you? I don't remember what it was like not to know how to read. So I sometimes think like we get so distant from the things that you just do automatically.
I think that's right.
But that's the nice thing, having postdocs being involved in supervising students, because you are closer to their level. You have different issues than the PIs, so you can give a more insight, like on the everyday lab work and how you're gonna go to the next step. It's like
or
that you are equally worried. Actually, that's the thing. It's not that because you are like we are a postdocs. Okay, fine. We have solved our problems. No, actually, it's
just different problems.
Yeah,
same problems, different side.
Yeah.
But,
how big is your lab? How many people do you have to manage? And
so I have, I think I have about 7 PhD students at the minute.
Ooh, that's a lot.
Yes. A couple of postdocs and a couple of technicians as well.
Oh, nice.
What's your ideal lab size?
I'm not sure what it should be really, but I think it's quite nice if you have a better balance between postdocs and PhD students. It's probably what. It's sort of just kept growing. So
I guess that's good.
It is, So it's.
I saw something on Twitter the other day about if you being a postdoc and getting a fellowship, and then seeing that person who got a fellowship is now looking for postdocs, and being concerned if someone who was a postdoc knows how to advise a postdoc, or whether what it got me thinking about is it better to have a postdoc as one of your first employees, or is it better to have a technician or a student as one of your first employees as you're trying to build your lab? Are you really prepared to help someone develop their own scientific independence when you have just gained yours?
Tricky.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a rhetorical question, maybe. I don't know.
I think it depends possibly on the routes that you've arrived at the position that you're now in that mentoring position. Because I suppose for me, I had postdoc for 12 years or something like that. So I suppose that that gave me a bit more experience than someone that might have done 3 years postdoc and come into an academic position straight from that. It also very much depends on the person that you've got. So some people, it's like my lab, I've got some people that are very keen to explore other ideas, have lots of ideas, very driven, and other people need a little bit more encouragement to do that. So I suppose it depends on the path and depends on the person from it.
Do you try to kind of suss out that when you're managing your people, knowing that they're different, that not everybody needs like the same type of push?
Yes, I think actually that's probably one of the hardest things that I don't think I learned very quickly, because I thought, I just do this, push, and realised that my encouragement or pushing didn't work for a couple of people, which I didn't realise until they actually said to me, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I said, right, okay, sorry. I was trying to be encouraging, but they found it too pushy. And it would be much better to encourage them to do it rather than push them to do it. And I was trying to do both, but I was saying, your time, I was saying about time, you need to really get on because of time, you're going to struggle with this, and this, and maybe highlighting the potential problems rather than trying to encourage them to come forward. And I sort of hadn't realised it. Because you respond how you do yourself, and it's a lot of different. I think it's a really hard thing managing people. It's something that I sort of think I'm not that good at.
Well, I can't say that. Like, you have lots of people in the lab, so probably you do well.
Well,
but I
think survey of happiness maybe. I think that's the other thing as well. Is it's really tricky because sometimes you just don't know unless someone tells you don't know, and reading people is really tricky. So I think I keep saying to people, I'm here to help you. I'm the next person after you that wants you to get your PhD.
Yeah.
Sometimes I might be the first person that wants to get your PhD. I'm here to help you, and will do anything I can to try and help you. So communicate. I think that's a key thing. Is tell me.
It's hard. It's a hard space to navigate. But I think going through those, probably as an advisor, but as well as an advisee, to be able to say, okay, now I know the triggers, maybe I know my own triggers, I know this other person's, and next time I'll try to maybe do better, or the next time I have to go talk to this person, I will try to be better as well. So it's a real learning.
I think it's always a learning curve. Every person's different, and I think I still definitely learn, and everybody that comes in the lab is a different way of approaching them.
And also, situations that change. For example, you were you said 11 years in Essex, so I assume that from the first year till the last year as a postdoc, like personal life has changed. So
I think also like self-reflection
too.
I know for me, just in the past few years, I have tried to think about how I work and how that makes me feel as a person. And trying to really gauge both things being constructive as opposed to competing with one another.
And I think, especially if you're going to relate in science, it's more and more important to relate it to the outside world. Academics don't sit in a closed little box anymore. It has to be translational to the outside world, and that's a real key important part of science and how science is changing. I think
the important word of impact.
Social impact.
So, and I think that's really important, and for that you do have to be able to communicate. You do have to see the needs outside, and you do have to see things from different sides. So you have to be an integrated person to do that, I think.
How easy you find to show impact working as in plant science and not working with crops?
Yes,
because
I do work with crops, which is
okay.
So I'm director of impact at Essex as well. So,
okay.
We've got an expert.
It's very much on my agenda.
Tell us how to do it.
Tell us.
So, and I think it's tricky. I think building up those, and for plants, I think what it is as well is it takes a long time from a discovery, sometimes from a discovery stage to an application stage, and to translate and that. So I think what is really important, which I try and install for everybody and everybody new, it is really important. Like so, a lot of people impact. It's low on their agenda, and it has to be raised up on their agenda. In terms of a number of things, it's going to direct funding. You can see funding already changing towards that driven challenges, societal challenges, and economy of the UK, globally, whatever it's going to go to, and it's becoming a key part of REF, which we're all have to think about. So I think you have to think about that. Is like what value is this information, these data? Where's it going to go? Mm-hmm. And I think that it has to start at some fundamental level, but there's a lot of applications in it. And I think the other key thing is trying to get contacts with the industry, the relevant end users in the industry, and trying to grow them contacts now.
Yeah.
For it. And that's how I've done a few impact things, is because I have had industrial contacts that I've known for 20 years.
Yeah. Do you think that that this knowledge of impact has to start also from the PhD level? Because what I understand is like we are postdocs and we are thinking about the fellowships, and then suddenly you are saying, oh, there is the REF, and the REF, a big part of it is impact, and then you suddenly, what is impact? And it was never asked as a PhD student or as a postdoc, to do.
Agree.
So you suddenly have to, and this is a big component, as you say, especially for the UK and like the OBBSRC and so on. So
I think it's something that should change, and it's something that I've suggested for Essex, is that we do need to bring that into the PhD program to make sure that it's there right from the very. PhDs are training, and therefore it should be a component of that training, at least in terms of understanding of where that's going. And it's also important for fellowships to ensure that you're pitching your work and the context of your work actually has that translation aspect as well, which is going to help in a fellowship application.
I think it is important to tell PhD students coming in, you need to learn how to do creative work in science, you need to learn how to train people technically as well as academically, but that also means that you have to be able to provide the support for them. So this is how you do that. Or at least think about it, or at least ask your advisor about it,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's hard. I think that's true. I mean, I remember feeling like that myself. Oh, what am I supposed to be doing that? They launch a new platform for teaching, but they don't tell you how to use it.
Yeah.
Click all them buttons, see what that does.
Yeah.
Seems to have gone somewhere. Must be job done. I think it's a really important point there that we don't. Actually, that's one thing that when you're saying about trying to mentor people, I try and encourage people to apply for travel grants and things like that.
Yeah.
Just, even though they're small, it just shows you've got that idea that you need to support research and travel and things like that. It's something for your CV as well. To apply for them sort of things.
Yeah, nothing too small.
Yeah, but I think that's right. I think you're right. You work on the lab, you do research, write papers, and then suddenly there's this whole other world that is.
Yeah.
And you have very little training for that, and it's really you train yourself with lots and lots of failures.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing as well. It's like another key thing. It's like to not feel it's a personal attack when your paper's rejected or your grant is not funded. It's just absolute. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
It's normal.
And it's not personally against you. It could be the fact that someone's not keen on that with somebody else. Might be it's personal, but it's not against you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people take it personally, and it's you've got to have a bit of tougher skin.
Yeah, or not see it as failure. Just see it as a process. We've been talking about this a lot. That it's not really there may be these kind of landmarks that you work towards, but in the most part, it's all just a process. You're just kind of moving along as best as you can. And I think one of the realizations I made recently was like, oh, no one knows what they're doing. Like we're all doing our best. That's all we're always being asked to do. I'm sure like even the REF, thinking about impact, like this was all new stuff that we've had to start integrating into our lives that we didn't know how to do it or what it means, but here we are doing it, Yes. So I think that's, just like something.
Adaptability.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I find is I don't feel like I have as much time. I don't have any time to think as much as, do you know what I mean? I would really like to just think of, sit and, I don't know, read loads of papers, think about something. I feel like that reflection time just gets reduced to nothing.
Yeah, that's something thinking about students. We have some students in the lab and they're at the bench all the time. And when they have to write a paper, they haven't read a whole lot because they don't see it as work. And I think now thinking about, social media and stuff, like using Twitter, using Facebook, these are things actually that have to be incorporated into our work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's not going away, and it's something that you have to engage with. And, we're trying to do that. I'll try and tweet, but sometimes a few days before I look at anything. And there seems to be a lot on there at the minute, So, But I think it's really important. And again, I think that's just also to make sure that you are visible, your work's visible, and it's all part of the network and in the bigger sort of social space.
So do you use a tweet? Do you have a Twitter for your lab, or do you have a personal one?
Yes, I have a personal one, and we do have one for the lab that one of the PhD students sort of puts things up now and again. So
nice.
It's I mean, I think we could do that a bit better, but
So it's a good starting point. Yeah.
So we probably don't. Well, I definitely don't. There's things I think I should do, and then it passes, and I go, I've missed it. But I think it's important.
And the question is kind of about using kind of social outlets to engage with the larger public, particularly maybe non-science public as well, or people who are maybe science adjacent. And what we as scientists should feel we have maybe a responsibility in discussing. Thinking about, the types of stuff that you can read on the internet about global climate change, about GMOs, about vaccines. At what point are scientists able to say in a responsible, we're responsible for making sure that this information is getting disseminated, or that we're saying these policies that politicians are making are not a good idea, that we kind of stand for something outside of just academia. Do you think that that this is a change, or that it's kind of dangerous, or that we do have a responsibility as kind of informed?
I think we should people. I think we are informed people, and we should try and help people to decipher some of those data and make those decisions, and try and put it forward in the best possible scientific driven light. And I think it's really important that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think that it's also important that that's addressed in the right way, and that we engage with the public and things like that. So, I'm just about to do one of them pint of science talks. Well, I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, but I'm doing one of them soon. And I think it's really important just to put some of that across, especially on big topical things like GMOs and stuff, because there's a lot of scary things out there, and a lot of it is driven by a lack of knowledge rather than anything else. And I think it is our duty to inform as part of that. And to teach and educate is part of our roles. And I think we have to do that to the wider public as well as within
academia.
I hope that the use of things like Twitter and these outlets do help kind of demystify us as people, that it does kind of bring down the wall a little bit between academics and the public, so that we're not so unapproachable.
Yes. I think it's got to be pitched at the level that's accessible for the person on the street, sort of idea. And I think if that means taking that to a level that's then to see the purpose of that, even if it's not the nitty gritty detail behind it, but to see the end, the end product of what that information will be used for, how those data will be used. I think that's the sort of level to say, that's why it's important to know that. And if we know that, we can do this. And that's important because the growing population and the climate change, and try and put all of that into a context that's understandable, I think is really key. And I think that's probably what a lot of scientists don't do. Everybody probably does. We're probably all guilty of that, because it's trying to take that to that acceptable.
It was great. Talking to you.
Use. Okay.
So this will appear in the website of the university and in YouTube.
We put it on YouTube. We tweet about it.
And then in iTunes, we have our own podcast in iTunes.
Well done.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. Please leave us messages on iTunes or on Twitter. You can follow Maria at @m_Papanatsu. You can follow me, Emily Larson, at @ERLarson_PhD. We'd love to hear what you think about the podcast series, as well as get any feedback about how we might be able to change or improve it for the future.